everyone. Can you hear me all right? Yeah, all good? Okay. So thank you very much, Michelle. Thanks, everyone, being here. I know there's some, it's the experiences stuff with like Stryber and Wharton in the other room, so, I understand that, drawing the masses. And thank you. I just want to say thanks to Bree as well, because he's like mainly organising all the stuff, and I was kind of a last-minute thing. So it was really lovely of them to make some space for me. It's early in the morning. I'm still waking up, so please give me a little bit of leeway. But thank you all for actually being here this time. I'll just say that this is Contact in the Desert, ufology, etc. And my earring is making a clicking.
If you don't mind taking
Oh yeah, no. That's hilarious. Okay, if I can take it off.
It's a cool earring though.
Yeah.
You want to see what it looks like? It's very cool.
It's actually quite funny. It's like this float. It's like this blue mask, which like floats. It's like floaty because it's like floating under my earlobe. And one of my participants on this DMT field study, so we did a naturalistic study of DMT use, and they like reported this entity that's like basically looked like this like floating blue mask. So I thought it was quite neat, like representing that totally just like kind of synchronously. Yeah, so I'm not an expert in ufology. I'm not like a ufologist, or really even abduction research is not my main thing. My main thing is near-death experiences and psychedelics, and because that was my doctorate. But I've just kind of moved into this, mainly kind of my own time and just my own research interests, and talking about it as opposed to doing kind of like formal research with interviewees and things like that. I think that will come soon. Ooh. So we're going to talk. I'll hopefully talk like an hour or so, and always have some good time for some discussion. But this is, and I think in the schedule it actually says the psychology of alien abduction, but it's actually mainly neuroscience stuff. There's some psychology at the end, which hopefully we'll actually have time to get to, and a bit of kind of cultural stuff thrown into the mix. But I think and when we get to that kind of Q&A, because it's talking about these neuroscientific models of the alien abduction experience, people are going to have differing opinions, or maybe competing evidence and things like that. And so maybe it would be cool to actually have some kind of debate at the end. So the talk is called Playing the Skeptic. So that is to say that I'm presenting all of this, all of these models, these working models and hypotheses that are there in the literature about how these abduction experiences come about from a more neurobiological, psychological framework, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that I totally endorse it. That's what I am and who I am as a scientist. I follow the evidence and see just how far it can get you. So with that kind of said, maybe as it almost like a kind of disclaimer, I don't know if there's experiences like amongst you who may have had like abduction type experiences, then just to be kind of on the safe side, if you think maybe that hearing about all of the models, which may or may not like be like compelling to you, maybe this actually isn't the best lecture for you to go to, because it might be uncomfortable. It's not to say that you will be convinced by these models, but I just wanted to be sensitive about that. But hopefully, you can kind of incorporate it, think about it, and we can kind of just like have a discussion about it. And I am throughout giving these kind of caveats as to the limitations of each of these kind of models, and we'll do that kind of at the end as well. Because let's not spoil the kind of conclusion. But as I mentioned to Michelle, I don't think I'd call myself an experiencer. I don't, like I said, I'm kind of getting into this field as to what that technically means, I'm still kind of figuring out when people say that. But I've certainly had different experiences. I've had psychedelic experiences. I've had, my dream life is extremely peculiar. Lots of lucid dreams and sleep paralysis and potentially precognitive dreams. But the sleep paralysis one is maybe something that I'll just quickly mention because, like I said, I've had these kind of experiences all throughout my life, and they've been very instrumental, as experiences are, in informing kind of what your world model, your worldview. And that's why I'm not just let's say, a pure hard scientist. My background's in neuroscience, but I'm basically applying these scientific frameworks to transpersonal phenomena, to these phenomena that seem to be on the fringes, right? Like near-death experiences and kind of now abduction phenomena and UFO type stuff. These experiences, especially when they're very profound and not really immediately amenable to these models, these explanations, that it obviously caused me to be very sympathetic to the actual reality of this stuff, right? So I'll just very quickly mention because the sleep paralysis experience that I had, maybe in my early 20s. And why it's relevant is because this, one of the main frameworks for the abduction kind of experience is sleep paralysis. So sleep paralysis, you might be familiar, is just you're sleeping, but you actually are paralyzed, but you're mentally awake. But there's a thing called REM intrusion, so REM, right, which is that kind of dreaming state, which kind of pervades into your waking life, but as you're still paralyzed. And you can have these kind of hallucinatory kind of phenomena, things moving around, and sensed presence effects, right? So the feeling that there's like an intruder in your room, and these sense of agency entities. And it's terrifying because you're paralyzed. And there may be specific reasons for that, which, I'm going to have a whole thing on sleep paralysis, so I'm not going to dwell on the exact mechanisms and everything right now because I will later. But my experience was, it was kind of similar to a night terror. So night terror is like when you suddenly become alert when coming from the deepest phases of sleep, which is kind of like this void experience where you're not supposed to be conscious. Yeah, it's like dreamless sleep, and then you suddenly have this awareness of like void and infiniteness, but it can be very fleeting but terrifying. And in my case, and kind of in the classic night terror thing, you kind of bolt upright. And I was like covered in sweat, absolutely just, abject terror. Screaming at the top of my lungs. Like you can kind of imagine that, like if someone third-person observer sees that and you just deeply asleep, fast asleep like a baby, and then you just bolt upright, covered in sweat, screaming at the top of your lungs, in the dark. And you see, I saw this kind of black swirling mass in the corner of my room, like this kind of vortex. And this, I didn't like see an entity, but it was this definite sense of presence. It was like this force, this agency there, which was like based just plainly malevolent. And I was like, my consciousness, or my sense of awareness was just, it felt like it was being drawn out of my body, by this sort of agency. And I was like screaming no at the top of my lungs, right? Like no, as in almost as if I was like exerting my sovereign kind of free will, let's say, maybe. That's how I kind of frame it as like a human being, to like say, no, this is my consciousness, I'm gonna stay right here, thank you very much, while it was trying to, these are just interpretative things which come later, but, so anyway, I just wanted to share that, given that, that's borderline abduction type stuff. And although I'm talking about all the science of alien abduction, that experience I haven't entirely subsumed in a just purely kind of materialistic way, right? All right, without further ado then. So, okay. So, the abduction experience, do we want to actually define it? There's just a particular researcher which has defined it here. So, forceful removal from a terrestrial location, typically to a UFO, and subject to interventions by non-human entities. Well, like all definitions, you can debate it. It doesn't always have to be UFO, and it doesn't always have to be these kind of manipulative things which are happening to you by these other agencies, but this researcher was just kind of looking at that prototype. So why actually talk, oh, is this working? Do I need to point at a particular thing? Okay, maybe I'll just use the space bar. That's all good. Yeah, so there was this watershed moment, right, looking into UFOs, or what was termed UAPs, and their apparent, like, actual existence, right, in 2017. And so there's this interest in it now, as to some kind of genuine physical effects in the sky. But it seems, even though the UAP thing, I mean, that whole thing can be an endless debate in and of itself, but it's phenomena now, right? So it seems like it could give a broader definition for what these things are, not just this like nuts and bolts so-called thing of this thing, this physical object in the sky, but because it's from this militaristic kind of context, it seems that's what seems to be highlighted. Actually, it's these like mechanical things going on actually in the sky. But yeah, but then there's actually, so this guy, Josh Cutchin, wrote this book, The Ecology of Souls, and that's really looking at this kind of phenomena from a more paranormal type perspective. But really he's trying to undergird all these kind of Fortean paranormal experiences, including alien abduction, with the idea of death. And that was basically what my talk was a couple of days ago. So, you know, there's this kind of, and so I did other talks that basically at the same time we put that book out on the same topic. So there's the kind of dichotomization of these things. It's like, well, is this stuff a consciousness experience? Is this stuff a physical? You know, so there's this, but it's you know, it must ultimately be like this false dualism, really. But and there's another interesting idea that after this watershed moment, like 2017, with the whole UAP stuff coming out, there's this resurgence of interest in this phenomenon, and that should include alien abduction phenomena. I haven't quite seen that yet necessarily from the kind of mainstream. But a similar thing happened with Roswell in 1947, when people were having kind of similar abduction, well, they were having entity encounter experiences, right? But then there was a shift when kind of Roswell happened, and there was this emphasis then on the mechanical again, that these ships were coming, and maybe these entity kind of encounters may be related to that. And then maybe there was an explanation of abduction that was occurring, that these entities were coming in these physical ships, and they were responsible for these kind of experiences that people were having, and this like generation into these kind of memes that abduction was the kind of a new model for what's going on, and it kind of incorporates into the cultural language, and people are having these kind of experiences. But the thing with the UAPs is that it might actually be real in the sense that now there's more and more evidence for the UAP thing. If people are also reporting these abductions, despite all of this research I'm just going to go into as to it being just psychological, neurological phenomenon, it obviously lends a bit more credence to the possibility that, you know, that abductions are actually happening. Yeah, so like I said, it might be that there's this like physicalist thing that's actually extraterrestrials, or this more paranormal thing where it's an experience in consciousness, in the sense of consciousness having some actual fundamental reality. You know, so it's actually happening on the level of kind of consciousness, or it's actually happening physically, or it's purely a sort of neurobiological, psychological phenomenon, right? So how do you actually reconcile all those things when there's actually some interesting supporting evidence for all of that going on? But the thing is, it's a human experience, right? Ultimately, it's a human experience. So that's what my kind of inroads to this whole thing is, being a neuroscientist, psychologist. That's how I can look at this phenomenon from that lens. So I just kind of wanted to do...
How do we know it's aliens? Couldn't that just be military aircraft? They now believe there's one planet for every star in the universe. There are already 8.4 billion artificial intelligences. Who could have built that 10,000 years ago? Where did you find the source for that? Could AI truly become sentient?
For a unique, in-depth, and rational look at these topics with the world's leading experts, check out Beyond Contact on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. Find us at contactinthedesert.com.